The Study Field of Economics 1. The reading contains topic sections, and each section contains activities. Completing these activities will test your understanding level, after which you can compare answers at the end of this learning unit. Overview. Every student probably has a vague idea about the subject or contents of economics. The newspapers, radio, television, and internet regularly provide information on economic growth, the gold price, the interest rate, the rand-dollar exchange rate, the inflation rate, balance of payments, strikes, unemployment, poverty, and many other aspects of economics. These concepts should become a great deal clearer to you through your studies in economics. Economics is also about everyday things. It is about the things that affect you, your family, your town, your country, and your planet. All of us participate daily as consumers, i.e. buyers of goods and services, and often as employees and employers. The subject of economics is therefore neither unknown nor foreign to you. Economics is also about how we make choices as individuals and as a society. And our lives are full of choices. Think of all the choices you have made today. Some of these choices are fun to make, such as deciding between having a hamburger or a pizza for lunch. Some are hard choices, such as between buying bread or milk since you do not have income to buy both. Topic outcome. After you have worked through the learning unit, you should be able to explain the economic problem of scarcity. Explain the meaning of unlimited needs and wants and scarce resources. Distinguish between scarce goods and free goods. Explain the three fundamental questions. Describe and distinguish between the factors of production and give examples of each. Explain the concept opportunity cost. 1.1 The economic problem of scarcity. After you have worked through this section of the learning unit, you should be able to explain the economic problem of scarcity. The reason we have to make choices is the existence of scarcity. There is simply not enough time in a day to do all the things you need or want to do. So, you are forced to choose between alternatives. Or it might be that you do not have enough income to purchase the goods and services you need and want. If one looks at different definitions of economics, you will see that a central theme is the issue of scarcity. Here are some of the well-known definitions of the field of study of economics. Economics is the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. Lionel Robbins. Economics is concerned with wants and resources. Robert Mundell. Economics is the study of scarcity, which results when people want more than can be produced. Ferguson and Maurice. Economics is the study of the use of scarce resources to satisfy unlimited wants. Richard Lipsey. Economics is the study of how people use their limited resources to try to satisfy unlimited wants. Michael Parkin. According to these definitions, the economic problem, also referred to as the scarcity problem, arises because the resources that we have available for the production of goods and services are limited, while our needs and wants for goods and services are unlimited. It is this fundamental problem of scarcity that is the common thread that binds all the topics that are studied in economics. Let's now explore what unlimited needs and wants and scarce resources actually mean. 1.2 Unlimited needs and wants and scarce resources. After you have worked through this section of the learning unit, you should be able to describe unlimited needs and wants and scarce resources. Every day we are confronted with many messages telling us that we need certain things. However, we do not really need all of these things. Many of them are things we merely want. Needs are things we really require to survive, such as basic food, clean water, shelter, and basic clothing. Wants are things we feel might improve our lives, but we do not really need these things to survive. A luxury car, the latest smartphone, concert tickets, your favorite artist's show, designer clothes, and accessories are not essential to survive, but are nice to have. We derive satisfaction from consuming these goods, and some goods give us more satisfaction than others. In economics, there is a specific term for this feeling of satisfaction: utility. Have you ever noticed how, once a need or want has been satisfied, there is always something else to take its place? We all would like more food, more love, and more free time, because what we have never seems to be enough. Even in wealthy societies, there are people whose wants and needs are never fully satisfied. Economics then starts from the basis that people's needs and wants are unlimited. Scarce resources. Economics is not only concerned with needs and wants, but also how best to satisfy these unlimited needs and wants. To this end, we have to consider how these goods and services are able to satisfy our needs and wants. What we find is that the resources at our disposal to produce the goods and services we need and want are limited. There are simply not have enough resources to produce all the things we need and want. There are over 7 billion people on our planet. Imagine the long list of every single person's needs and wants. Now imagine trying to satisfy everyone's needs and wants with the resources available. For example, consider how much food 7 billion people need. On Earth there is only so much land available that can be used to cultivate the crops to feed everyone. And, to make matters worse, the amount of land that is available is decreasing all the time because it is increasingly being used for other things, such as industry, cities, or biofuel crops. Added to the fact that as humans we are never fully satisfied, we are indeed facing a severe problem. It is because of these unlimited needs and wants, on the one hand, and our limited resources, on the other, that the economic problem, the scarcity problem, exists. The study of economics is about how we as a society deal and should deal with this scarcity problem. Resources include everything in the world around us that we can use to produce goods and services to satisfy our needs and wants. It is usually classified in the following three main groups: natural resources, such as land, water, minerals, animals, and plants. Human resources, such as entrepreneurs or labor such as economists, builders, architects, accountants, lawyers, and cleaners. Man-made resources such as machines and infrastructure that are available to use to produce goods. In economics we call these resources capital. 1.3 Scarce goods and free goods. After you have worked through this section of the learning unit, you should be able to differentiate between scarce goods and free goods. A scarce good is one for which the choice of one alternative requires that another be given up. Consider a parcel of land. The parcel presents us with several alternative uses. We could build a house on it. We could put a gas station on it. We could create a small park on it. We could leave the land undeveloped in order to be able to make a decision later as to how it should be used. Suppose we have decided the land should be used for housing. Should it be a large and expensive house or several modest ones? Suppose it is to be a large and expensive house. Who should live in the house? If the lees live in it, then gwins cannot. There are alternative uses of the land both in the sense of the type of use and also in the sense of who gets to use it. The fact that land is scarce means that society must make choices concerning its use. Virtually everything is scarce. Consider the air we breathe, which is available in huge quantity at no charge to us. Could it possibly be scarce? The test of whether air is scarce is whether it has alternative uses. What uses can we make of the air? We breathe it. We pollute it when we drive our cars, heat our houses, or operate our factories. In effect, one use of the air is as a garbage dump. We certainly need the air to breathe. But just as certainly, we choose to dump garbage in it. Those two uses are clearly alternatives to each other. The more garbage we dump in the air, the less desirable and healthy it will be to breathe. If we decide we want to breathe cleaner air, we must limit the activities that generate pollution. Air is a scarce good because it has alternative uses. Not all goods, however, confront us with such choices. A free good is one for which the choice of one use does not require that we give up another. One example of a free good is gravity. The fact that gravity is holding you to the earth does not mean that your neighbor is forced to drift up into space. One person's use of gravity is not an alternative to another person's use. There are not many free goods. Outer space, for example, was a free good when the only use we made of it was to gaze at it. But now, our use of space has reached the point where one use can be an alternative to another. Conflicts have already arisen over the allocation of orbital slots for communication satellites. Thus, even parts of outer space are scarce. Space will surely become more scarce as we find new ways to use it. Scarcity characterizes virtually everything. Consequently, the scope of economics is wide indeed. Do the following activity on the economic problem before you proceed. Activity 1. 1.1 Indicate whether the following statements is true or false. T. F. Scarcity is a problem in poor countries only. Scarcity is a problem faced by poor households only. The economic problem of scarcity arises because needs and wants are unlimited and the resources, or means, to fulfill these wants are limited. An economy's capacity to produce is limited by the quantity and quality of the available resources. The economic problem of scarcity can be solved by increasing the productivity of resources. Scarce goods are goods that have no alternative use. Economics is mainly about the study of free goods. 1.2 An example of a natural resource is water. An entrepreneur. A tractor. 1.3 An example of a man-made resource is water. An entrepreneur. A tractor. 1.4 An example of a human resources is water. An entrepreneur. A tractor. 1.4 The three fundamental questions. After you have worked through this section of the learning unit, you should be able to differentiate between scarce goods and free goods. We have established that economics is the study of how society uses its limited resources to satisfy some of our unlimited wants and needs to deal with the economic problem of scarcity. Each and every society, whether it's capitalist, or communist, socialist or some other kind of system, needs to answer the following three fundamental questions. What goods and services to produce? Since we cannot produce all the goods and services that people need and want, we need to decide what is the best combination of goods and services that we should produce. This decision then requires that we allocate our scarce resource to the production of these goods and services. This is indeed a very complicated decision, since we need to decide what kind of food and how much of it to produce, what kind of houses and how much houses to build, what kind of education to provide, how much healthcare, and countless more decisions about televisions, clothes, cell phones, beer, cold drinks, etc. We also need to answer the question about what kind of capital goods, that is the machines and tools we use in the production of goods and services, we need to produce. And we to do this under the condition that our resources are scarce, which implies that we cannot produce everything, and that once a resource is allocated to the production of a good, it is not available for the production of another good. We are all aware of the pressing shortage of housing in South Africa today. But do we really know whether we should build houses or rather concentrate on providing more food? Is the production of food not more important than providing houses? Do we know how much more food could be produced if we built fewer houses? How to produce the goods and services. Through the process of production, our resources are combined to produce the desired goods and services. It is possible to produce the same product by using a different combination of our scarce resources, and the challenge to society is to find the most efficient way of producing goods and services. This efficiency requirement is very important since our resources are limited, and we cannot afford to waste it by producing the wrong goods and services and/or produce the desired combination of goods and services in an inefficient way. The more effectively and efficiently resources are used, the more goods and services can be produced, and the more needs and wants can be satisfied. So, efficient and effective use of our scarce resources contributes to economic growth and the wealth of our nation. We as a society are again confronted with difficult decisions. If, for instance, we decide to build houses, should it be built with bricks, wood, or concrete blocks? In New York, most construction uses steel or concrete. There is not an abundance of timber for building, whereas in Nisna there are a lot of timber homes, because there are ample and well-managed forests. Should we make use of unskilled labor, or should we rather use sophisticated building techniques which require large capital outlays? Capital-intensive, labor-intensive. For whom to produce? We produce goods and services to satisfy people's needs and wants. But which people's needs and wants? Who gets the houses, the food, the computers, the cars that we have produced? This question deals with the distribution of goods and services, and it is one of the most challenging questions to answer. Do the following activity on the three fundamental questions. Activity 2. Read the following extract from an article which appeared on the website of the New Age newspaper on December 4, 2015, and answer the questions. Limited university space shuts out scores of students. Batandwa Malingo. Thousands of university applicants have been turned away as universities across the country struggle to accommodate growing numbers of young people wanting to study. At least 7 major universities in the country had received a combined total of more than 300,000 first-year applications for placements next year, but fewer than 50,000 were accepted for the new academic year. Admissions had reportedly become competitive, and universities were able only to admit a limited number of students. The number of spaces available was reportedly in line with the enrollment plan approved by the Department of Higher Education and Training. More than 90,000 first-year applications had been received by the University of Johannesburg, with only 10,500 accepted. The University of Western Cape received 50,000 applications and had taken a mere 4,500, while Wits University accepted 6,300 students from more than 65,000 applicants. Rhodes University took in 1,800 from 7,830 applicants, while the University of Cape Town accepted 4,200 from more than 19,000 applicants. University accepted 6,300 students from more than 65,000 applicants. Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University had 6,056 students from more than 50,000 applications. The application period for all these institutions had ended, and those whose applications were unsuccessful were urged to find alternative institutions to study. Source 2.1. Indicate whether you agree or disagree with the following statements. It is clear from the article that in terms of the question of what to produce, the South African society decided to allocate its resources in such a way that its higher education institutions can accept approximately 50,000 new students in 2015. The number of students that were admitted is less than the number of students that apply to study at higher education institutions. To increase the number of places, the South African society needs to allocate more resources to higher education institutions, which can be done very easily since it has an abundance of resources. To answer the question for whom to produce, in this case who will be accepted to study, the South African society decided to award the places on a first-come first-served basis. 1.5 Factors of production. After you have worked through this section of the learning unit, you should be able to describe and distinguish between the factors of production. Overview. From the discussion on the economic problem, We know it arises because wants and needs are unlimited and resources are scarce. In a market system, these scarce resources are mainly the following four factors of production: natural resources, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Natural resources and labor are sometimes called primary factors of production, while capital and entrepreneurship are referred to as secondary factors of production. These factors of production are important for two reasons. Without them, there can be no production of goods and services. Think about what is needed to produce a wooden table. You need the wood, equipment, a saw and hammer, and you need human resources, labor and entrepreneurship. A second reason why the factors of production are important in a market system is that it is from the ownership of the factors of production that households derive an income. The factors of production play a key role in solving the three fundamental questions of what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom to produce it. Natural resources. After you have worked through this section of the learning unit, you should be able to describe and identify natural resources and the income that is derived from the ownership of natural resources. Read through the following extract from Stats SA. Environmental economic accounts for South Africa. The natural environment provides resources, such as water, land, and minerals, that drive the economy and other human activities. The effective measurement of the extent of resource use is vital for ensuring the development of successful environmental management policies and sustainability. The United Nations System of Environmental and Economic Accounts, CA, adopted by Stats SA, is the international standard for measuring the amount of natural resources a country has in reserve, and how quickly these reserves are being used. Stats SA has developed the following environmental economic accounts for South Africa. Energy, the amount of energy produced by coal, crude oil, gas, hydro, nuclear, petroleum, waste and renewable resources, minerals, physical stocks and flows, depletion rates, sales and resource rent for gold, coal and platinum group metals, PGMs, and fisheries, the physical stock of hake, lobster, abalone, and horse mackerel caught over time. These are published in the annual Environmental Economic Accounts Compendium Report. Discussion documents on the compilation of water accounts have also been published. At current production levels, South Africa has only 39 years of accessible gold reserves remaining, whereas the country still has 335 years of platinum group metal reserves and 256 years of coal reserves. This is according to Stats SA's latest environmental economic accounts. Compendium Point 5. Once the world's top producer of gold, dwindling gold reserves have implications for future policies related to the economy, mining, and employment. The influence of mining, as well as manufacturing, on the economy has waned over the decades. Manufacturing was the largest industry in 1980, contributing 22% to GDP. In other words, for every R100 of value add that the South African economy produced that year, R22 was due to manufacturing. By 2016, its contribution had fallen to 13%. Mining's contribution increased during the 1970s and peaked at 21% in 1980. Contributing to the upward surge in 1980 was a relatively high gold price. In 1987, mining employed just over 760,000 individuals. In 2016, the industry contributed only 8% to GDP, employing 438,000 individuals in the third quarter of that year. 6. Agriculture also slipped in economic ranking to fall from 7th to 10th place, contributing 2% to GDP in 2016. http://www.statssa.gov.za/?p=107118. A natural resource is anything that people can use which comes from nature. Because this factor of production is not created primarily by human endeavor, most of the various natural resources are given and can often not be increased at will. Note the following examples of natural resources: air, water, and soil. Biological resources, e.g. plants and animals. Raw materials, e.g. minerals. Space and land. Wind, geothermal, tidal and solar energy. Natural resources are often classified into renewable, flow and non-renewable resources. Renewable resources are usually living and can therefore renew themselves, assuming they are not killed off or over-harvested. Good examples of renewable sources are trees, forests and woodlands, crops, and livestock like fish. Water and soil are also renewable sources, but they are classified as non-living. The tides, solar power and wind can be classified as flow renewable resources. They are all renewable, but they do not need regeneration or regrowth. Non-renewable resources are those which cannot be replaced once they have been used up or harvested. This includes fossil fuels, coal and petroleum. Most natural resources are limited, but with the aid of technology, they can be made more productive. For example, fertilizers have improved the quality of land, thus making more land available for agriculture, and improved drilling technology has opened up oil deposits in frozen areas such as Alaska. Nevertheless, as natural resources are limited, in fixed supply, exploiting them should be carefully considered. Overexploitation or rapid, fast exploitation can cause terrible environmental damage as well as long-term economic, environmental, and human suffering. Income from natural resources. The owners of natural resources earn an income in the form of rent from it. In everyday usage, the word rent has different meanings. Many people rent their houses, offices, and shops. Included in this rent is the rent for both the land on which the house, office, or shop is situated and the building itself. The concept of rent is also used in connection with the rental of a car or computer. When we use the concept of rent in the field of natural resources, we refer to the payment made to the owners of natural resources for the use of the natural resources. It excludes the rental payments for the improvements on the land, such as a building or factory. Activity 3. 3.1 Which of the following is not an example of a natural resource? A cell phone. Water. Oil. Coal. 3.2 Indicate whether the following statement is true or false. Many natural resources come from the earth and are therefore unlimited. Owners of natural resources receive rent as income for making natural resources available for the production of goods and services. Labor. After you have worked through this section of the learning unit, you should be able to describe and identify labor and the income that is derived from the ownership of labor. Read through the following extract from Stats essay about job losses in South Africa. More bad news for job seekers. More bad news looms for job seekers as the formal non-agricultural sector of the economy reported a decline of 34,000 jobs for the quarter ended June 2017. This is according to the latest Quarterly Employment Statistics (QES) report released by Statistics South Africa. The QES data tracks changes in employment at the establishment level, and thus provide a picture of aggregate employment growth statistics. There was a decline in employment in both the March 2017 and June 2017 quarters. The QES recorded consecutive losses of 41,000 jobs and 34,000 jobs over the last two quarters, respectively. The manufacturing industry reported the highest job loss of 13,000 employees. This was followed by losses in the construction industry with 11,000 jobs, the community and social services industry with 10,000 jobs, the transport and communication industry with 5,000 jobs and the business services industry with 1,000 jobs. However, the mining industry created 3,000 jobs in the quarter ended June 2017. This is the second quarter in succession where jobs were created in the mining industry. The trade industry made a recovery of 3,000 jobs in the current quarter from a decline of 30,000 jobs in March 2017. Job levels in the electricity industry remained unchanged. Gross earnings for the quarter ended June 2017 continued on a downward trend with a decline by $3 billion. This follows a decline of $19.5 billion in the previous quarter. The total amount of gross earnings measured for the quarter was $585 billion. This is down from $587 billion. The decline in earnings was driven by the business services industry with a quarter-on-quarter decrease of $13.6 billion. This follows 3 successive quarters of positive growth in earnings. Despite the overall decline, earnings in the mining sector increased by $182 million, manufacturing increased by $144 million, electricity increased by $44 million, construction increased by $469 million, trade increased by $970 million, transport increased by $18 billion and community services increased by $7 billion. Average monthly earnings were measured at $18,666 in the formal non-agricultural sector of the economy for the June 2017 quarter. This is an increase of 17% from the previous quarter and an increase of 14% from the same quarter in 2016. http://www.statssa.gov.za/p=10509. According to economists, an important cause of job losses is the inflexibility of the labor market. The following is an extract by Dieter von Fintel, 2015, on the issue of the flexibility of the South African labor market. How flexible is the South African labor market in the short and long run? The inflexibility of the labor market has become a common scapegoat to explain the low rate of employment and the muted growth of, especially small, firms in South Africa. It is argued that employee-friendly labor laws put workers in a strong position vis-a-vis employers to bargain for high wages despite a crippling unemployment rate and a low growth of labor productivity. Feder 2012, Klein 2012. The World Competitiveness Report of the World Economic Forum, WEF, consistently rates the SA labor market among the least efficient in the world. Many argue that liberalizing the labor market to allow greater wage flexibility and to reduce the constraints on firing workers would go a long way towards solving the unemployment problem. He then reaches the conclusion that new evidence shows that only in specific contexts, unionized workers in the short run, does wage rigidity restrain the ability of the labor market to absorb workers. In the long run, wages are much more flexible and structural factors explain more of the unemployment puzzle. The policy debate on unemployment and wage flexibility needs to take these subtleties into account. Labor is the human effort that is put into the production of goods and services, and includes both physical and mental effort. For example, writing a book involves both physical effort, typing, and mental effort, using the brain for research and creativity. In modern societies, this concept is usually limited to remunerative activities, with the result that, say, amateur sport and a housewife's labor are excluded. This description is inadequate when applied to developing countries or the economies of earlier societies. In such communities, the bulk of production is intended for the consumption of the producer, so that remunerative activities represent only a fraction of the productive effort of the labor force. When we talk about labor, we need to separate it into the quality and the quantity of labor. The quantity of labor refers to the size of a population, the number of people who are of a working age, 15 to 64 years old, and who are willing and able to work. The quality of labor refers to the skill, knowledge, and health of workers. The quality of labor is also often called human capital. Human capital is becoming increasingly important in modern production processes. Even more important than the quantity of labor is the quality of labor. Many economists believe that the difference in living standards between countries is mainly due to differences in human capital. The higher the quality of human capital in a country, the higher the productivity of labor, and the more goods and services are produced to satisfy needs and wants. The assertion that labor is available only in limited quantities requires some comment, since it is common knowledge that many countries are struggling with the problem of overpopulation. Bear in mind, however, that the productivity of a labor force depends not only on the number of laborers available, but also on the strength, health, skills, and training of the workers concerned. So it is possible for a country to have an oversupply of unskilled labor but a shortage of skilled labor. Income from labor. In return for providing firms with labor services, the owners of these labor services receive remuneration in the form of wages and salaries, royalties, commissions, management and consultancy fees, bonuses and fringe benefits, housing, medical aid, pension contributions, etc. In a market system, the underlying forces that determine the level of wages and the difference in wages are linked to the forces of demand and supply. The demand for labor is based on the demand for goods and services that are to be produced with labor. The remuneration of labor will depend on two things, namely the demand for the goods and services produced by labor and how valuable the person is to the firm. Do the following activity which deals with the factor of production labor. Activity 4. Indicate whether the following statements is true or false. T. F. 4.1 The factor of production labor only refers to physical labor. 4.2 In South Africa, the quality of labor is just as important as the size of the labor force. 4.3 The term human capital refers to the number of workers. Capital. After you have worked through this section of the learning unit, you should be able to describe and identify capital and the income that is derived from the ownership of capital. On the issue of white monopoly capital, Lucien van der Walt, 2016, writes, existing alongside vast private companies, not all of which fit the label white monopoly capital, is another massive economic force, the state apparatus, the biggest single employer, landowner, income-earning institution, and by any reasonable measure, the dominant monopoly capital in electricity, rail, roads, forestry, television, sectors of banking, higher education, and elsewhere. South Africa, I argue, is controlled by a single ruling class, divided into two sectors, a largely white, private sector elite, and a largely black, state elite. This is united at both a deep structural level, through common interests and interdependence, and at a more conjunctural level, by current neoliberal programs and alliances, among which note can be made of the Growth, Employment and Redistribution GEAR strategy, 1996, or the fact that almost every single cabinet minister is a shareholder in one or more companies. It is not held together by the corruption of a few people, or by incorrect programs, not by poor state leadership, not even by the ANC, all of which can be changed. The state can no more be wielded against private capitalists than one brick in a wall can fight another, and capitalism and the state can no more lose their character of exploitation and domination than a wall can become an aeroplane. Efforts to capture the state can, at most, lead to a few people, mainly party leaders, joining the ruling class, nothing more. The strategic task must then become one of building a movement outside and against the private and state corporations and the state more generally, by the broad working class, including the unemployed, which is both victim and potential destroyer of the system. Capital comprises all manufactured resources, such as machines, tools and buildings, which are used in production of other goods and services. This includes the entire range of durable equipment, from hammers, saws and other simple tools, to aircraft, ships, electronic computers, and nuclear reactors. The characteristic of a capital good that makes it different from other goods is that it is created with the specific aim of producing goods and services. Consumer goods satisfy wants directly, whereas capital goods, which are used in the production of consumer goods, satisfy wants indirectly. Capital goods also differ from raw materials and intermediate goods in the sense that they are not used up immediately in the process of production. They are used over and over again in the process of production. An economist's use of capital differs from that of the man in the street. If the economist refers to capital, he or she means real capital, equipment, and not money. Money is not a resource that can be used directly in production. However, money does make it possible to purchase capital and other goods. One reason why capital goods are scarce is that saving, which is abstaining from consumption, is a necessary prerequisite for capital formation or investment. This means that people are not buying and consuming as many goods and services as they otherwise would, so that resources are released from the production of consumer goods and made available for the production of capital goods. If a community insists on using all its factors of production for producing consumer goods, obviously it cannot produce any capital goods at all. Capital goods play a vital role in creating production capacity. The more machines, factories and tools we have, the more goods and services we can produce. The better the quality of these machines and so forth, the more productive we can be, and the more productive we are, the higher our economic growth will be. Income from capital. The reward for capital is the interest payment that the owner of capital receives for making his or her capital available for production. This is expressed as an annual percentage of the amount loaned to purchase the capital goods and is called the interest rate. In the case of a loan of R100,000 and an interest payment of R100,000, the interest rate received is equal to 10% per annum, since R100,000 divided by R100,000 by 100 equals 10%. The interest rate is determined in the financial and capital markets. Do the following activity which deals with the factor of production capital. Activity 5. 5.1 The factor of production capital is created when Mr. B buys existing shares on the stock exchange. Mrs. D inherits her $5 million from her grandfather. The Conrad Business School builds a new classroom. 5.2 Which of the following is not a factor of production? Young migrant workers. Infrastructure such as highways. Money held in bank and building society accounts. Unexploited gas reserves in the Karoo. 5.3 Thandi owns a building that she rents out to Patrick. Jeff owns agricultural land that he rents to Glynis, who uses it to produce tomatoes. Temba works as a clerk for an auditing firm. What are the earnings of the following people which they derive from the ownership of the factors of production? Thandi, Jeff, Themba. Entrepreneurship. After you have worked through this section of the learning unit, you should be able to describe and identify entrepreneurship and the income that is derived from the ownership of entrepreneurship. The following is a post by an unknown user on the MyMedia24 website about the difficulties of being an entrepreneur. Unemployment and the missing key factor of production. Why does the government keep promising more jobs for the jobless in South Africa when they know deep in their heart that there will be no improvement of employment in the formal and to a lesser extent in the informal sector until such time they understand and address the 4 factors of production? Politicians promise that they will create jobs. How? Where will these jobs come from? The 4 factors of production, labor, capital, natural resources, and entrepreneurship are key to the improvement and sustainability of any economy. Although all factors are as important as the other, it must be stressed that entrepreneurship is the vital and most important key to South Africa's future growth and prosperity. South Africa is blessed with natural resources and labor. Capital is abundant. The only element missing in South Africa is entrepreneurship. Just try and approach one of the big 4 for money to start or expand your own business. Impossible. I have a business which I am trying to expand. I also have 3 employees. The business proposal is thorough, cash flow predictions are conservative, I have a customer base, I am listed as a supplier with one of South Africa's major retail chains, but still the banks won't budge until you have 50% collateral before they extend cash. How bizarre. So in order to obtain our 500,000 you need to lodge our 250,000 as collateral. Now why would you ask for cash in the first place? I still say that in order to obtain a loan from any bank, you need to give them 20 reasons why you don't need the loan until they grant you a loan. Please bear in mind that the Big Four annually post inflation-beating profits. Banks are on a self-fulfilling mission to tell the public at large that they are there to assist small business. They are not. Whilst millions are poured into advertising and sport, banks are missing the point. Why not plow this money into small business? I approached the DTI for funding, which was just as frustrating. When I called, the dear lady promised me she would send an email with all the avenues to funding. What a joke! I received an email with 5 entities which provide funding. It looked like the document was compiled at the last minute and none of them can help anyway. Now I ask you, how does small business expand with no access to finance from the formal sector? Until the South African government as well as the big banks understand that the only way to grow an economy is through promoting and financing small business, thereby creating employment, the jobs problem in this country will only worsen. Stop promising jobs when you don't know where they are going to come from for cheap electioneering. Entrepreneurship is the willingness to take risks and develop, organize and manage a business venture in a competitive global marketplace that is constantly evolving. Entrepreneurs are pioneers, innovators, leaders, and inventors. The way in which land, labor and capital are combined and organized in the production process is the function of the entrepreneur, from the French word entrepreneur, someone who undertakes. Without the vision of the entrepreneur, labor and other resources would remain largely unrealized potential. The entrepreneur is also the innovator who comes to the fore with new goods or new production techniques. That is why he or she is at the same time the bearer of risk. His or her time, effort, reputation and own funds, and those of others, are at stake should the innovation fail. The entrepreneur is also responsible for the taking of non-routine decisions in the management of the enterprise. Capable, energetic, and imaginative entrepreneurs are perhaps the most valuable of all productive resources. Income from entrepreneurship. Profit is the remuneration of the entrepreneur, who is the driving force in a market economy. In all the activities undertaken by entrepreneurs, they face the risk of failure. Why do you think they are willing to undertake this risk of failure? In a market economy, the possibility of making a profit is a strong incentive for entrepreneurs to undertake the risk associated with the establishment of new enterprises. Typically, an entrepreneur will weigh the risk of failure against the probability of making a profit. If the probability of making a profit outweighs the risk involved, the entrepreneur will be willing to undertake the enterprise. If the entrepreneur is successful in providing the right product, at the right price and the right time, to the right consumers, he or she will be able to make a profit. Profits are the difference between the revenue received from selling the goods or service to the market and the cost of producing the good or service. If revenue exceeds the cost of production, a profit is made. If the revenue is less than the cost of production, a loss is made. The amount of profit a business makes is determined by how successful the business is. It is not possible to determine beforehand what the profit will be. The amount earned by the entrepreneur might change from one period to the next. There is no guarantee that a profit will be made. Whether or not a profit is made depends on how successful the entrepreneur is. The more successful the entrepreneur is, the higher his or her profits will be. Do the following activity which deals with the factors of production. Activity 6. 6.1 Individuals who are willing to take risks, bring resources together, develop new products and start new businesses are referred to as _______________. Aid entrepreneurs. Resources. Services. 6.2 Indicate whether the following statement is true or false. Without entrepreneurship, economic success cannot be guaranteed. Indicate whether the following statement is true or false. Without entrepreneurship, economic success cannot be guaranteed. A. True. B. False. 6.3 The payment for entrepreneurship is wages, interest, profits, rent. 6.4 Choose the appropriate factor of production in brackets. One of the best-known entrepreneurs in South Africa is Sol Kersner, who developed the Sun City/Lost City hotel complex near Rustenburg. He saw the opportunity to provide a service with which he could help to satisfy people's needs for tourism and entertainment. He bought land, which is a natural resource, capital, labor, to build the hotel complex on. He then bought or hired the necessary machines and tools, natural resources, capital, labor, to have the complex built, and employed people, natural resources, capital, labor, to construct the hotels and maintain them afterwards. Services are constantly being supplied to the guests with the help of devices such as cleaning equipment, refrigerators, buses, boats, natural resources, capital, labor, for pleasure rides, and so on. 1.6 Opportunity cost. After you have worked through this section of the learning unit, you should be able to define and explain opportunity cost. Overview. Resources are limited, while needs and wants are unlimited. We are therefore faced with the economic problem of scarcity, which forces us as individuals and as a society to continuously make choices about how our scarce resources are to be used to satisfy our needs and wants. In this section, we will argue that whenever a choice is made, it involves a cost that is known as the opportunity cost of the choice. We will also show that because of the existence of opportunity cost, there is nothing such as a free lunch, which basically means that it is impossible to get something for nothing since the cost of something is ultimately borne by someone in a particular society. Opportunity cost of studying economics. Since you are reading this, it can be safely assumed that you have made a choice to study economics. The question that arises here is, what is the opportunity cost of your choice to study economics? Before we formally define opportunity cost, you need to do the following. Reflect on the cost of this choice by considering the following two questions. How much does it cost you to study economics? What did you give up studying economics? The easier question to answer is the one about how much it will cost you to study economics. This is usually interpreted as meaning how much money you would have to pay to study the course. This would include the course fee which, in 2017, is R1,950 for ECS1501, the course you are registered for. If you require a textbook for the course, then the cost of the book becomes part of the cost of studying economics. This also applies to any printing costs. If these costs are paid by your parents, family members, or a bursary scheme, it might cost you nothing, but the cost is borne by someone, which means that it is by no means free. The second question is more tricky and goes to the heart of the concept of opportunity cost. The question is, what would you be doing if you were not studying economics? These costs could be in the form of wages that you could have earned instead of using your time to study, or it could be those things you could be doing if you were not studying. To determine the opportunity cost of studying for this course, you need to include not only the monetary cost of studying the course, but also those things that you have to give up in order to study. Opportunity cost is therefore a broader concept than simply the amount you have to pay, because it also includes the best alternative that you have to give up in order to do what you are doing. Based on the above, we can formally define opportunity cost of a choice as follows. Opportunity cost is the value to the decision maker of the best alternative that is given up. Note that it is not the value of all the alternatives that are given up, but only the value of the best alternative. Do the following activities on opportunity cost. Activity 7. 7.1 You are given the following information about a student who is studying economics. Course fee. R2000. Internet connectivity. R300. Hardware and software cost. R1000. Cost of food. R3000. Travel cost to examination center. R120. Wages the student could have earned if not studying economics. R8000. Use this information to calculate the opportunity cost of studying economics for the student. 7.2 It is Saturday, and Fo decides to attend a soccer league match which costs her $250 and takes up 2 hours of her time. If she had not attended the soccer match, she would have read a couple of magazines. Her opportunity cost to attend the soccer league matches $250 plus the value of reading the magazines. Only $250. Only the value of reading the magazines. 0 because it is a Saturday, and these are recreational activities. 7.3 It is Saturday, and Peter decides to attend a soccer league match which costs him $250 and takes up 2 hours of his time. He is supposed to mow the lawn but decides to hire someone to do it at $50 per hour while he is at the soccer match. It will take 2 hours to mow the lawn. His opportunity cost to attend the soccer league matches $250 for the soccer match. $100 that he must pay someone to mow the lawn. $350, which is the $250 for the match and $100 for mowing the lawn. 7.4 Glenda works as a consultant and earns $500 per hour. It is Saturday, and she decides to attend a soccer league match instead of working. The cost of the soccer matches $250, and it takes up 2 hours of her time. Her opportunity cost to attend the soccer matches $250 for the soccer match. $1000 she could have earned working. $250, which is the cost of the attending the soccer match, plus the lost earning of $1000. The opportunity cost to society. Up to this point, when we calculated the cost of studying economics, we have only the cost to you or your family. Economists, however, are not only interested in the opportunity cost to the individual, but also the opportunity cost to society. The question then is how much it is costing society to provide a student with the opportunity to study economics. To calculate this cost, we need to include the subsidy that the government pays towards higher education. For a hypothetical student, the calculation of the opportunity cost to society might be as follows. Course fee $200. Internet connectivity $300. Hardware and software cost $1000. Subsidy by government $400. Travel cost to examination center $120. Wages the student could have earned if not studying economics $8000. According to these figures, the opportunity cost to provide a student with an opportunity to study economics is $13,829, which is significantly more than the direct monetary cost to the student. The reason forgo, to do without, wages are included is because society is losing the contribution to production that the student could have made if he or she were not studying. It is a loss to society and therefore part of the cost. It is not only individuals and households that face opportunity cost, but businesses and governments as well. Businesses make a variety of decisions on a daily basis, and each of these decisions implies an opportunity cost. If a business, for instance, decides to use its personnel to upgrade its customer database, the opportunity cost might be not using the personnel to update the sales database. Opening a new factory might also involve an opportunity cost in terms of not investing in equipment to improve the efficiency of the existing factory. The South African government also faces opportunity costs. It strives to provide housing, electricity, running water, free health services, education, and jobs to South Africans. However, because resources are limited, it will have to decide what must be done first and what will have to be postponed until later. The best alternative that is not undertaken is then the opportunity cost of the current choice. If the government decides to provide free higher education and the best alternative for the use of this money is the creation of jobs, then the opportunity cost of free higher education is the jobs that are not created. As you can see from the above, the concept of opportunity cost may be applied to many different situations and arises when we need to make a choice between different alternatives. While opportunity cost is usually expressed in terms of money, as was done in the example of the student studying economics, it can also be done in terms of hours spent or some kind of output measure. Consider the following example. In the following hypothetical country, laptops and mobile phones are produced using the country's resources. If all the resources are used, the country can produce the following combination of laptops and mobile phones. Production of laptop and mobile phones. Combinations. Laptops. Mobile phones. A. 3,000. 18,000. B. 4,000. 10,000. The information in the above table shows that the opportunity cost of increasing the production of laptops from 3,000 to 4,000, that is, by 1,000, is the loss of the production of mobile phones from 18,000 to 10,000. The opportunity cost of increasing the production of laptops by 1,000 is therefore 8,000 mobile phones. Now do the following activities on opportunity cost. Activity 8. 8.1 A small business owns the building in which it operates and therefore pays no rent. This then implies that there is no opportunity cost for the business with regard to the building. A. True. B. False. 8.2 Johannes is currently working as a computer programmer for a large corporation and earns $500,000 per year. He is considering starting his own business and is currently estimating the opportunity cost of doing so. Should he include the loss of his current income as part of the opportunity cost to start his own business? A. Yes, he should include it. B. No, he should not include it. There is no such thing as free higher education. It is estimated that to provide free higher education for students will cost around $100 billion per year. In applying the concept of opportunity cost to free higher education, economists would put forward the following argument. There is no such thing as free higher education because someone has to pay for it. As a society, we will need to make a decision about who will pay for it. But even if the $100 billion could be found before it is used to finance higher education, the alternative uses of the $100 billion should also be considered. Should we not spend it on primary and tertiary education or health or job creation? To be able to make this decision, we need to do a cost-benefit analysis. Answers to the activities. Activity 1. 1.1. False. Both poor and rich countries experience scarcity since the problem of scarcity arises because needs and wants are unlimited and the resources, or means, to fulfill these needs and wants are limited. People in rich countries also have wants that are not satisfied. For example, they might want a third car or a bigger house. False. Both poor and rich households experience scarcity since the problem of scarcity arises because needs and wants are unlimited and the resources, or means, to fulfill these wants are limited. Rich people also have wants that are not fully satisfied. For instance, they might want a third car or a bigger house. True. We have unlimited needs and wants, on the one hand, and scarce resources, on the other, which leads to scarcity. In economics, we study how a society deals and should deal with this scarcity problem. True. Resources are required to produce goods and services. Resources. The more and better the quality of the resources, the greater the capacity will be to produce goods and services to satisfy needs and wants. False. The scarcity problem arises because our needs and wants are unlimited. While an increase in the productivity of our resources increases our capacity to produce more goods and services, it will still not be enough to satisfy all our needs and wants since our needs and wants are unlimited. Our needs and wants will always exceed or outstrip our resources. F. False. Scarce goods have alternative uses. G. False. Economics mainly studies scarce goods. 1.2 Water is an example of natural resources, an entrepreneur is an example of human resources, and a tractor is an example of man-made resources, capital. 1.3 A tractor is an example of man-made resources, capital, water is an example of natural resources, and an entrepreneur is an example of human resources. 1.4 An entrepreneur is an example of a human resources, a tractor is an example of man-made resources, capital, and water is an example of natural resources. Activity 2. 2.1 You should agree since only 50,000 new students can be accommodated at our higher education institutions. You should agree since the number of students that were admitted is 50,000 while the number that applied were 300,000. The statement is only partially correct. If we wish to increase the number of places, we need to allocate more resources to higher education institutions, but we cannot do it easily because we do not have an abundance of resources to allocate. Our resources are scarce. You should disagree since the allocation of the places is awarded on a number of criteria such as APS scores and scores for national benchmark tests as well as ability to pay. Activity 3. 3.1 The correct option is A. It is a cell phone. Bear in mind that natural resources are not made by humans. They are gifts of nature. 3.2 The statement is false. Natural resources do come from the earth, but they are scarce and must be used with great care. For example, humans cannot survive without water. If water is not available, the human race will die out. The statement is true. The owners of natural resources earn an income in the form of rent from these resources. The statement is true. The owners of natural resources earn an income in the form of rent from these resources. Activity 4. The statement is false. Labor refers to human effort that is put into the production of goods and services, and includes both physical and mental effort. The statement is false. In South Africa, the quality of the labor is more important than the size of the labor force. The statement is false. The term human capital refers to knowledge, talents, skills, abilities, experience, intelligence, training, judgment, and wisdom of the labor force and not to the number of workers. Activity 5. The correct option is C. Capital is something that is created to be used in the production of goods and services. These include things such as machines, tools, and buildings. When the Conrad Business School builds a new classroom, the classroom will be used to provide educational services. When Mr. B buys existing shares on the stock exchange, no capital goods are created. He is making a financial investment. Mrs. D is lucky because she has inherited financial wealth from her grandfather. No capital goods have been created in the process. The correct option is C. Young migrant workers are part of the factor of production labor. Infrastructure development are part of the factor of production capital. Unexploited gas reserves are part of the factor of production natural resources. Money, however, is not a factor of production. 5.3. Tandy, interest. Jeff, rent. Temba, wages. Thandi rents out a capital good and her income is interest. Jeff rents out agricultural land which is part of natural resources and his income is rent. Themba sells his labor and receives wages for it. Activity 6. 6.1 The correct option is A. It is the entrepreneurs in a market economy who are willing to take risks, bring resources together, develop new products and start new businesses. 6.2 The statement is true. 6.3 The correct option is C. The payment for entrepreneurship is profits. 6.4 One of the best-known entrepreneurs in South Africa is Sol Kersner, who developed the Sun City/Lost City hotel complex near Rustenburg. He saw the opportunity to provide a service with which he could help to satisfy people's needs for tourism and entertainment. He bought land, which is a natural resource, to build the hotel complex on. He then bought or hired the necessary machines and tools, capital, to have the complex built, and employed people, labor, to construct the hotels and maintain them afterwards. Services are constantly being supplied to the guests with the help of devices such as cleaning equipment, refrigerators, buses, boats, capital, for pleasure rides, and so on. Activity 7. 7.1 It is our 11.420. The only item that is not included in calculating the opportunity cost is the cost of food. Even if the student is not studying, he or she still has to eat. 7.2a. She pays her $2.50 for the match and loses the value of reading her magazines. The $2.50, plus the satisfaction of reading magazines, is her opportunity cost. 7.3c. His opportunity cost is the $2.50 for the soccer match and the $100 he pays for someone to mow the lawn. 7.4c. Her opportunity cost is equal to the $2.50 for the soccer match and the $1,000 she loses by not working. Activity 8. 8.1 False. The best alternative use of the building is the opportunity cost of the small business using the building for their own operation. For instance, the owners of the business could have rented out the building and rented more suitable premises elsewhere. When economists calculate the cost of doing business, they include this alternative use as part of the cost. 8.2 He should include it. Opportunity cost is the value to the decision maker of the best alternative that is given up or sacrificed. Johannes is giving up his salary of $500,000 per year, and it should therefore be part of his opportunity cost. Checklist. Well. Satisfactory. Must redo. Concepts and explanations. I am able to. Explain the economic problem of scarcity. Distinguish between unlimited wants and needs. Identify the three main scarce resources. Distinguish between scarce and free goods. Identify and describe the three fundamental economic questions: what, how, and for whom. Define the four factors of production and to give examples of each. Distinguish between the incomes of the factors of production. Explain why money is not a factor of production. Define opportunity cost. Explain why scarcity of resources leads to opportunity costs. Give examples of opportunity cost. The end. Thank you for watching and good luck for all your studies.